everybody. Welcome to another episode of Punching Up with Sean Conroy. Thanks so much for being here. Today, I just wanted to briefly tell you about one of the worst experiences I ever had performing and what I learned from it. And it's tough because I have had a lot of bad experiences. That's the nature of performing comedy in front of people. Even when you're a great stand-up, things can go off the rails. See? Just like that. Things can go off the rails very quickly, or an audience might not like you. You might affect them the wrong way up top. The situation might be bad. You don't necessarily kill every time. I've heard stories about great stand-up comics, and I think I'm good. I think I'm great. But you know what I mean. People who are famous, who you know who they are because of their stand-up. People mostly know who I am because I'm well dressed and I do a lot of work on set decoration. So I just want to talk about one experience I had because this is the one that stands out in all the years I've been performing. This is the one where I'm like, this was the worst set I've ever had. And it was at a club in New York City, which was kind of my home club for a number of years, called Stand Up New York. It was a club I loved. I really enjoyed a lot of what I did there. There were some great people who worked there. And I was a client of the owner. He was my manager for a while. And so I got stage time through the owner at the club. The problem for me was that at that time in stand-up, and I don't know if this is still true, I suspect it is, stand-ups basically had to work their way up through the system by doing stuff like cleaning the toilets and putting address cards out on the table and doing a raffle before the show so that you could tell people, hey, you won free tickets to the show on Thursday night. And they wouldn't realize that nobody cares about the price of the tickets. They just care about the price of the drinks. So there was lots of people there who were working their way up the food chain, and I somehow skipped over that and never had to do all that. And, that obviously has political repercussions. And I'm using political in a human to human sense, not in terms of it says in the Constitution that stand-ups need to clean the toilets before they get stage time. No. So the booker of the club resented the fact that I had the ability to get stage time through the owner. It had to go through him. So anyway, one time I, in retrospect, realized he was trying to teach me a lesson. I was saying, can I get more stage time? Can I get more stage time? Ultimately, he was like, sure, you can have a spot this Friday at midnight. Now, one thing I didn't realize early in my career, but I figured out later because I'm really smart, is that Friday night late shows are the worst time of the week because everybody's been working all week. They probably went out Thursday night. They're exhausted. They went out after work to happy hour. They're drunk. There's just a million reasons. And this isn't always true. Obviously, not everybody goes to happy hour and not everybody works. Some people don't have jobs. But generally speaking, those were always the toughest shows. And the way that show ran at that club was that the midnight show was 1 hour long and it was three comics. And the first comic would go up and do 20 minutes and bring up the second comic. The second comic would do 20 minutes and bring up the third comic. And the third comic, guess what, would do 20 minutes and then bring up the guy who cleaned the toilet to do the lottery so that people could win free tickets for the following Tuesday morning show. And anyway, I was on the midnight show. I was going to do 20 minutes. The show was packed. There were 200 people in the room. And I was going to go up third. I was going to go up third of the three comics to do my 20 minutes. And the first comic who went up is somebody who you might know. I'm not going to be specific about who these people were, but they it was somebody who you would probably recognize if you are into comedy and stand-up comedy. Somebody who I really like, and I actually wrote jokes for this person for a little while, but who is very different in sensibilities from myself and talks a lot about sexual stuff in very graphic terms. And I won't get into it because this is a rated PG program, but there's a lot of stuff there that is, and what that does is when that first person does all that stuff, it kind of sets the bar for the show. The second person is another person whose name you would probably recognize if you're a fan of stand-up. Neither of them, well, that's not true. One of them is sort of an A-lister. One of them is sort of I guess both of them are sort of A-listers, both very good comics. This was 25 years ago, so they weren't A-listers yet, but they are now. And the second person who went up did a lot of the same type of stuff with an element of not just sexual stuff, but sleaziness. In other words, I don't even want to get into it, but you know, taking that stuff to another level of filth. Um, and the crowd loved it. The crowd loved both of them. They really were having a great time. And then, you know where this is going. It was my turn. So I went up and I said, who knows? I probably still do remember some of the jokes, but it was like, oh, do you guys like time travel? Are you into, who here loves Harry Potter? Like that was my sensibility. And the audience was not happy. They didn't heckle, they didn't boo, they just sat in stony silence. And if you've never been in a room with 200 people sitting silently that wasn't a library, it's a weird feeling, especially if you're trying to make them laugh. Not just a weird feeling, an uncomfortable feeling. Some might say a terrible feeling. So I was on stage and I was just continuing to do my jokes one after another, trying not to do what people do sometimes in that situation, which is speed up and try to get through things faster. I was, taking my time, which has always been a thing for me, is being very deliberate. And, let's talk a little about, I don't know, the Dewey Decimal System, which is how I organize my sock drawer. Not that. Those are both sort of, I guess, kind of hacky topics. But, you know, in that vein of here's something that I think is interesting. And they were like, we don't agree with you. We are not on board. In fact, there was a couple of us that were on board and we dove overboard as quickly as we could. We didn't care if there was lifeboats. We didn't care if there was life jackets. We just wanted to get the fuck off this boat. So I eventually got to my 20 minutes. It felt more like at least 21 or 22, but it was only 20. And I did what you're supposed to do when you're doing stand up, which is I kind of indicated to the audience that I was about to finish so they would know this was my last joke and they would applaud and we would all go home and have Ben and Jerry's. By the way, today's show is sponsored by no one. Um, and I said, okay, I'm going to get out of here. And I just heard one person all the way in the back of the room. So basically number 199 out of 200 people in a room of 200 people, if they had been standing in a straight line, which, that would be a weird way to set up a club. But I go, well, I'm going to get out of here. And this person just goes, thank God. Just real low, but loud enough for the whole club to hear it. And I said, sir, I agree with you 100%. This will be a relief for all of us. That got not, I wouldn't say a huge laugh, but a good laugh. Like people were so relieved. There had been so much tension in the room. Everybody laughed at that. And I walked off stage. And like I said, this is the set that I think back to and go, this was the worst set I've ever had. And it's weird because there were so many people there, but it still felt awful. Whereas I've done shows in front of 2 to 6 people on numerous occasions and felt much better about it afterwards. But I walked off stage and I immediately tried to remember all the good things. Like I didn't speed up. I stuck to my material. I didn't pander to the audience. Um, I did what I wanted to do. And I think that's my takeaway from that is I have stuff I want to say, and that's what I'm going to work on. And I think you do too. So don't be afraid just because somebody says, I don't like that, to continue pursuing that. Not, this is not an incredible lightning bolt insight, but not everything is for everybody. There are even people who don't love time travel humor. I think they're insane, but they exist. So I would say stick to your guns, but that feels too Second Amendment. So I'll just say do what you like, um, which now we're getting into old hip hop songs. I apologize for that. There's no way to say it without it sounding like a cliche, but you have something to say and feel good about saying that, even if everybody doesn't always agree. All right. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being there. Thanks for being where you are. I appreciate you. I will see you again next time on Punching Up with Sean Conroy. Please like and subscribe. I appreciate it. It helps us. Please help us. I'm going to get out of here. Thank you.